This is Legally Goff, where we mix law, pop culture, and the occasional chaos of real life. I'm your hostess with the mostest, Brooke Goff, lawyer, businesswoman, and professional truth teller. Buckle up, this isn't your grandma's legal podcast. Today we're testing who's tougher, a professional basketball player or a lawyer. My money's on Jen Rizzotti. She's been yelling plays longer than I've been yelling objections. Welcome to Legally Goff. So the next guest on our show is one of my favorite athletes when I was growing up. Don't worry, I'm not aging you. I'm not saying what my age is. I'm not doing anything.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. Jen Rosati. And it's so interesting because, you know, full circle for me, growing up, and I had told the story when people asked me what kind of athlete I wanted to be, because I wanted to be pro, your name consistently came up. I respected the hell out of what you've done and what you did. Now you're the president of the Connecticut Sun. And I want to talk a little bit about what you've done in your journey to get to where you are. Cool?
Yeah, sure.
All right. So why don't you talk to us a little bit about your UConn days? Because, you know, you are in the women's basketball capital of America, I'd argue.
Yes.
And UConn's where it's at. So maybe you can talk to us a little bit about playing with Gino, playing for Gino, CD, all that good stuff.
Mm-hmm. Sure, I'd love to. Well, first of all, I'll say my name probably kept coming up because we were both like short, feisty women. So
It's probably true.
I made a living out of being tough and, having a lot of heart. So I think that's probably why I ended up at UConn to begin with is, there was some recognition from Gino that, I was the type of leader and point guard that he wanted to kind of take UConn into that next phase of their journey. They had just come off of a Final Four for the first time, and they had signed Rebecca Lobo, so it was like a big-time recruit. And, he's really good at identifying the players that have the intangibles that could make a team really special, not just the talent. And so I, leaned towards wanting to play for him because I really wanted to be challenged as a basketball player. I wanted to be challenged as a person. I wanted to have the opportunity to play right away. And, he never guaranteed that, but the opportunity was there. And so it kind of like set the foundation and I think shaped a lot of who I became as a coach and now team president. Because I've learned since, I was 20 years old that like leadership can transfer if you do it right. It'll transfer no matter where you are as the top person in an organization.
Did you always want to go to UConn to play basketball?
I did not. So I had first of all, it was a different time. So it's not like now where every little girl in the state wants to play basketball and wants to play at UConn. They were just kind of on the cusp of getting good. They were in the Big East, battling with Providence every year. So they weren't even the top team in the Big East conference every year. And I was actually out of state until my sophomore year of high school. So I didn't kind of grow up in my middle school years thinking about where I wanted to play college. So they just came into the picture, as did Providence and Rutgers and Iowa, James Madison schools in the area, some out of the area. And they were just kind of 1 or 4 or 5 schools that I was considering. And I think the visit that I made there and the time that I spent with their players and their coaches when I was on campus, really, that was when it really started to stand apart for me in terms of like what my college choice was going to be.
And it's interesting because during that time, a lot of the women that you played with ended up going pro, right?
Yes.
So talk to us about that first team. So you're a freshman, you're coming in. Mm-hmm. Who was on that first team that you played with?
Yeah, so Rebecca Lobo and Pam Weber were my sophomores. So they were my hosts on my official visit. The big reason why I wanted to go to UConn was to play with them. I also came in, the class that I came in with had Jamel Elliott, who's now a current assistant coach at UConn right now, and Kim Better. And then we had juniors, Tanya Boone and Colleen Healy, and a senior, Kathy Ferrier. We really were kind of a very small, young, feisty team that didn't have a ton of success my freshman year. So Rebecca was the big name, but it wasn't until after my freshman year that we really started to get player after player after player. Kara Walters and Carla Berube showed up, and then Nikisha Sales, and then all of a sudden the program was rolling.
And so, again, everybody knows Rebecca Lobo, whether in Connecticut or anywhere else, right?
Yeah.
And you remain friends with her, right?
Of course, yep.
Most of the players that you played with at that time, do you still have a good relationship with?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I see them fairly often, I guess, as in my adult life when we're all really busy. It's nice that we stay connected. We either find ways to connect at a UConn game or at a women's Final Four, or we visit each other because we are all across the country. But there's definitely that bond. We support Jamel, who's, coaching at UConn, and Carla, who's coaching at Princeton. And obviously Rebecca's doing her broadcasting, and her and I coached our boys AAU team together. So we just kind of, it's easier to stay in touch now than it was when we first got out of college, but we've somehow maintained decades later a really special relationship.
And I think something that's important that I don't think a lot of people realize is right now we're in this culture of women's basketball is huge.
Yeah.
But when you played it kind of wasn't, right? It wasn't for a long time. Actually,
No.
until about the last maybe 5 or 6 years, it's really started to pick up some traction. So at the time that you go through college and you went pro, but the WNBA was not yet the thing, correct? So can you kind of talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So first of all, when I was growing up, when you asked did I always want to go to UConn, there was no women's basketball on TV. There was no women's basketball coverage in the paper. You couldn't find a score. I even remember when I committed there, I was looking to see if they won, and I had to scour the sports pages just to see if they won their game or not the night before. So there was the Final Four, and then maybe one weekend during the season where I could turn on the TV and see women's basketball. And I can remember watching Iowa play and watching Dawn Staley at Virginia play and Pat Summitt's Tennessee teams. And your exposure to women's basketball was so limited. The access was so limited. Then I went to UConn, and, we started to turn the corner. CPTV started to broadcast our games, and all of a sudden our arenas sold out by my junior year. We're on national television. The UConn-Tennessee rivalry starts. The 1996 Olympics are on the horizon, and you're seeing a little bit of momentum around women's basketball in the United States. And I can remember people say, "Oh, did you always want to play professional basketball?" I'm like, there was no professional basketball when I grew up. The ABL started literally 4 months after I graduated, and the WNBA started 6 months later. So we didn't have these aspirations to be pro athletes unless we wanted to go overseas. So it wasn't a big thing. It was just starting, just trying to pick up traction. I played in the ABL for a couple years. We didn't have a TV deal, so the league folded after 2.5, which probably ended up being a good thing because then it meant that all the best talent was now converging on the WNBA. And there was a moment where there was heightened awareness around the league, probably 2003, 2004, where when they talk now about all the records that are being broken, attendance records, they're the records that were held in 2004. So there was some popularity brewing around the league and excitement. They had the right markets, they had invested owners, and then it was it started to lose popularity, and that's when owners started jumping ship. And when the Mohegan Tribe decided, okay, well, if you don't want a team down there in Orlando, we would love a team up here in Connecticut, because if there's any state that knows how to celebrate and support women's basketball, it's the state of Connecticut. And that's how the Mohegan Tribe got the Connecticut Sun.
I think that it's also, this ABL idea is interesting because most people don't understand that it was kind of created without any money to begin with, right? It was very poorly funded, a couple investors.
Yeah.
And did you have a contract with them?
I did. Yeah, I mean, we got paid probably 4 times as much as the WNBA players were getting paid. Yeah. At that time, our contracts were significantly higher. We played during the traditional basketball season over the winter, and we averaged over 10,000 fans in the XL Center, and then we played a couple games up in Springfield. There was a lot of fan support for the ABL. They were in markets that made sense, and people went to games. The problem was there was no exposure because it wasn't on TV. And so you really can't fund a league without TV rights money. So it ended up not being able to last. And and I don't want to say compete because it sounds like a negative connotation, but it couldn't compete with the WNBA, who had the backing of the NBA at the time, and also wouldn't have been able to survive without the backing of the NBA.
Yeah, you talk about the pay, and me and Brooke have talked about that a million times.
Yeah.
So you have the difference in NBA and WNBA, and then you have the NIL now in college, where these kids are making a fortune.
Yeah.
Millions of dollars in college. What's your stance on all that?
Well, I wish they had it when I was in college.
Yeah, I wish they did
I would be retired by now.
Yeah.
I think, it's funny when they first started talking about it, my initial reaction was like, you don't go to college to make money. Like, you go there, like, you're going to ruin the sanctity of amateur sports, right? Like, your pay is your scholarship. Like, you're going there, all expenses paid. You're going to play basketball in college. I understand the motivation behind it, right? I understand that even for someone like me back in the early 1990s, like, I could have made money off of my name and my image and my likeness. But it's turned into like pay for play, which for me that's professional sports. So we've lost a little bit of the innocence of why people play college basketball. I wish they had thought through some of the unintended consequences of what NIL would look like, because there's a big difference between profiting off of endorsements because of your popularity and getting paid to play basketball in college because a football booster wants their women's basketball team to be good. So it's gotten a little out of hand, but it's great to see women being able to profit off of their hard work, and their sweat and their tears and the sacrifices that they made to be a high-level athlete. So we've seen a pretty significant shift of the rookies coming into the WNBA over the last few years in terms of understanding what their personal brand is, that they're not coming in just as a first-round draft pick basketball player, but they're coming in with a brand. So that's better for our business because they understand business. And they understand that although their salary right now may not be super high, having the opportunity to play in the WNBA and continue to utilize the platform of the WNBA to expose their brand to an even bigger audience is going to benefit them in the long run. So when people talk about players getting paid more or less, or who benefits more, both the players and the league are benefiting from each other, right? Like, the players are benefiting from this platform. The league is benefiting from having these terrific players that really understand the business of their personal brands, but also how to elevate the WNBA. So it's been pretty phenomenal to watch that shift.
I mean, I do feel, though, that I understand the nil concept. Again, it wasn't the initial brainchildren of it was actually for male sports. It wasn't even for female sports.
Yes,
Surprise.
yeah.
But I do understand it in that there are some serious athletes that come out of these institutions, and they're right. Everybody else is making money hand over fist, except them.
Yep.
I hear you. It's like kind of like a toll, right? Like, get through college, like, this is your scholarship, all that. But I think I support it more. I mean, what's good for one is good for all. I get it. But I support it very much around women because of the pay disparity.
Yes.
That's in professional sports. I mean,
yes.
Statistics show that women are actually making way more on nil deals in college than they will ever make for the first, 5 years in the W.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Yes.
Right? And how do we fix that? And I mean, listen, I'm sure you have all the intentions of saying, if I can do something, tell me what I can do. Yeah. But there's so much controversy around it right now. You have Caitlin Clark coming in making 70 something, and Paige the same thing. And then you have Victor Wanyambama coming in making 50 million. And it's like, it's sending the wrong message to our youth. So I kind of feel like nil, I don't want to say evens that out. It doesn't.
Yeah.
But it at least gets athletes excited to keep on the ride.
Yeah. Well, there two things I'll say about that is it does even the playing field for the elite female athletes.
Yes, elite.
It doesn't necessarily even the playing field for all the other female athletes, because now when you talk about how much money football brings in college, this is how it started, right? Is like these football players are like, you're making hundreds of millions of dollars off of my back, and I'm not seeing any of it. Coaches are seeing it. Like universities seeing it. But what's now happening is like they're seeing it, but now other sports are not getting funded because they have to give 18 million of their 20 million NIL money to football and 1 million to basketball, 1 million to women's basketball. And so the concept of like Title IX making it, equal opportunity for all and equal resources for all is kind of going out the window a little bit, which is scary. But for the elite female athletes, I 100% agree that this gives them an opportunity that they deserve. And now professional sports needs to catch up. And it is, right? Like it is with the TV rights deal that we signed last year that starts next year, with revenues increasing, with partnerships increasing at the league level and the team level. There's going to be opportunity for these players to make a lot more money. Will they make what the men's players make? No, we're not there yet, but neither was the NBA. Like if you talk to even Michael Jordan, you talk to some of these players that played when we were growing up, they don't have any of the money left from their salaries. They have a bunch of money left from their endorsements, but they didn't make a lot of money when they were in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s either, when the league was just starting. So I think we need to kind of have a little patience too, that like this is a league that has grown exponentially. These college players are a huge reason for why there's increased exposure in women's basketball right now. So let's find a way to continue to make it, even more worthwhile for them to be an elite athlete. And the fact that they can come into the league, hopefully with some sound financial advice, and the opportunity to really profit off of being a great athlete the way men have always been able to do, is just a positive sign that we're moving in the right direction.
In these female athletes now, the women basketball players are amazing because you see Paige and you see Caitlin, and being the president of a organization that goes up against these players. It must be really cool. Like you're cheering for them on one end because you want them to do really well, but of course you want to beat them, right? But how do you feel about all of the social media attention, positive, negative, all of the just trolling attention, all the attention that these athletes are getting when all they're trying to do is just, I assume the life is different than they lived before, just live this new life?
It's pretty funny because I remember somebody said at one point, well, they should just turn off social media. And the response was, they built their brand on social media. They can't turn it off. And so it's almost given license to people to say and do whatever they want because these players are so active on social media channels and people have access to them the way that they never did before. And it's such a different world. They're not just competing, like showing up and practicing and then competing. Like every single person in the world has an opinion on what they wore walking into the arena and how they played that game and what their post-game press conference was. And it's like there's a different dynamic to what they have to handle, emotionally and like mentally, that we just didn't have to deal with growing up, right? We could just go out and play, right? And if anybody wanted to get in touch with us, they had to call us on like a house phone, right?
Yeah.
So
you had to be home.
You had to be home.
Yeah, you had to be. Yeah, exactly.
Mine's clear.
So the only time that I had access to outside criticism was in a press conference, and someone had to actually say something to my face, which, if you know me and you knew what I was like, it didn't go well, right?
Yeah.
So now, people, any of us, right, get criticism from people who are just hiding behind a phone and a keyboard, and these players are they're pretty amazing in how they've handled it. But what I will say is it has forced all college and professional organizations to really invest in mental health resources, because they're not just playing basketball anymore. They are dealing with expectations and they are dealing with criticism, and some of them choose to engage. We've had players like Dejanay she's going to go right back at you, right? And then you have players who can decide not to engage, but maybe they're internalizing all of it. So it's a different world, and it's almost like people want to say, well, it's the price you pay to be a professional athlete. But whether you're a female women's basketball player or a men's football player, these athletes should not have to put up with what they do. I don't think it should be a price that they pay to be a pro athlete. at all.
I would agree, but there's also sometimes, right, a reaction for every action.
Yeah.
So you see, especially now, a big thing in the WNBA that we've seen a huge shift in the last few years is sexuality. People are now, the women that are playing, where they didn't feel like they could be themselves or say who they are, they're now, I mean, kind of broadcasting the sexuality. I mean, there's, Paige and AZ, the same, like, they had publicly made their relationship. And I don't think that these women can appreciate that for every person that's like, I am so happy for you.
Yeah.
There's also going to be haters. The haters that people, when you played, didn't want to talk about it to avoid.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
I mean, if there are athletes that watch this and they're struggling in that, what kind of advice would you give them?
Well, what I will say is one of the reasons I'm proud to be in the WNBA is because I don't think that there's another league in the world where the players literally stand up for what they believe in and truly feel comfortable being authentically themselves. They don't feel that way in college, obviously. They don't feel that way in other sports. Men definitely don't feel that way. And yet you've seen this shift in the WNBA culture where, they're going to speak up when they feel like there's an injustice, right? Sure. They're going to dress the way that they want. They're going to act the way that they want. They're going to be proud of who they are. And I think it gives courage to the next generation of female athletes to say, well, this is a league that I'd love to be a part of, but even if I'm not good enough to play in it, they can be my role models. Because I don't think the women in our league are necessarily role models just as basketball players. I think they're role models because of who they are as people. Because because of what they stand for, because of what they say, because of the brands that they align with, and because they have become more than just an athlete. And so I just think that my advice would be is to look at our women, to emulate who they are, and have the courage to be who you are authentically. Because at the end of the day, they also have each other's back, and you see that every time something big happens. They fight each other on the court, literally fight each other on the court. But the minute someone makes a stance on something important off the court, the other 150 women in this league will have their back. And so it just kind of makes me proud to be a part of the league, knowing that that's who they are, and that's what I'm trying to support. And that the more opportunity that I can put my women, whether they're, like Olivia Nelson-Ododa that rolls up in like a gown for games, or it's like Sanaya who comes in, with her baggy jeans and her backwards hat, and the amount of different styles there are on our team, and the different individual personalities. I think as an organization, if we can continue to show that and showcase that and make that accessible to young girls and young boys, then we're doing our part in making sure that people are more comfortable being themselves.
And you had said that about, that's what makes you so proud of being part of the WNBA. Yeah. And everybody has their backs, and I agree with that. A big controversy this year was this Brittney Griner thing, right? Yeah. Transgender athletes, whatever. I mean, she unfortunately has had to speak out about something she should never have to speak out about.
Yeah.
And the whole league has had her back.
Yes.
It's not the people that have to play against her that are like, no, she shouldn't fit the bill to be a WNBA athlete. It's not fair.
Yeah.
It's everybody else.
Yeah.
Like, what are your thoughts, on that controversy with her and her being put in this situation where she literally has to just defend who she is, like who she was born to be?
Yeah. Yeah. I think the trans issue in sports right now is it's such a difficult topic, right? It's one of those ones where it's like so hard to know. I don't want to say what's right and wrong, but in Brittney's case, it's almost like she's being pushed into this category of being a trans woman, and she's not, right?
Not a trans woman, nope.
She's a woman, and yet she's 6'8", and yet she has, potential. She has a deep voice, and she doesn't present overly feminine, but she's a woman, and she always has been. And it's sad that she has to defend that about herself, and it's sad that it brings up additional issues around trans boys and girls in sport. right? And where's the line of whether or not that should be allowed, and what that means for an 11-year-old versus a 25-year-old, right? I think, but you look at our league, and our coaches are wearing T-shirts that say "Protect trans kids at all costs," because whether or not they identify with it, or they, in Brittney's case, have been forced to have an opinion on the matter, they have always been a population that has been discriminated against, right? And so the women in basketball have always had to defend who they are. And so they're always going to have a voice for people who have to defend themselves, right? Because they know they've had to fight for attention. They've had to fight against people who want to discriminate against them. They've had to come out now and be proud of, their sexuality, right? Or how they identify. We had a trans player in the league, Lasia Clarendon, a couple years back. They all had her back, right? So it's almost like they've become this population that is going to fight for anybody who's marginalized and anybody who's discriminated against, because they've grown up fighting for their rights. They've grown up fighting for attention, and they've grown up fighting to live an authentic life because it wasn't accepted even as early as 8 to 10 years ago. And now they're like breaking the mold. And again, it's just like, it's humbling to be a part of that. And I know Brittney Griner, like personally, I've coached her a bunch in USA basketball, and she's literally one of the sweetest, kindest human beings I've ever met. And she handles all of this with so much grace that she's like literally probably the most beloved player in the entire league.
And she's got little kids that are going to read all about it one day.
Yes.
And it's a shame.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So with the Connecticut Sun, of course, being the president of the organization, I just think it's so important to kind of chat with you a little bit, because we're talking about players kind of being able to be themselves and talk on social media. But do you guys give these players kind of any coaching as to, hey, there could be blowback from this or this? I'm asking this question because of Nafisa's recent comments going on.
Yep.
I sit there, and not as a pro athlete, but as an athlete growing up, and I think, be yourself, but did someone drop the ball here? Or should she have had a closed door meeting first and said, hey, you got to understand you might be going to war with the wrong people?
Yeah.
Do you guys provide that oversight to your athletes? And obviously you only have so much control.
Yep.
But you at least try to help them make those decisions a little better?
So what we do typically is meet with them before the season starts, and typically have a conversation around PR and social media conduct. And it's not necessarily so much about like what our rules are, right? It's more about like, this is how we can best support you. Mm-hmm. We want to help you build your brand. We want to be there as a buffer, and we want to be there to offer advice. They don't have to take it, right? But we've had many instances in the last few years where a player on our team will call Alexandra, who's our director of comms, and say, hey, I would like to respond to this, but I want to do it in the right way. Can you help me think through what would be a good way to say this? So we can't tell them what to do, right? They are their own brand. So like I mentioned Dejanay before we could even tell her to think about it, she would already be texting a response. So our response to that is like, okay, well, we're here if you need it. If you need mental health support, right? Like we're also here because what you're hearing and what you're getting back on that is really unfair. So we're also here to offer resources to you if you need it. But a lot of the players, they do want to be thoughtful on how they represent themselves, how they represent the organization. And we ask them just, hey, you're not just representing you and your own personal brand, but you are representing the Connecticut Sun organization. So let us help you when you feel like you're in a difficult situation. Obviously, they do press conferences, they do interviews. We always have staff there to make sure that the questions are appropriate, that if they have a question that they don't want to answer, that someone's there to step in and say, we're not going to have no comment on that one, move to the next question. So we do try to offer some support and some oversight, but more importantly, it's education, right? It's like, how do we help you understand? We do have people that, that meet with our players off the court and talk about developing their individual brand. We bring in media, people who do media training for them. And we're finding that a lot of these kids are coming out of college with a lot of media training, but we do emphasize the importance of not necessarily just reacting to what people are saying on social media. At the beginning of the year, the WNBA also announced that they had an anti-hate task force that they were employing that would allow us to download software on our social media accounts, players included, that would immediately remove any negative comments from their social media channels so that they're not actually having to turn on Instagram or Twitter or whatever and read all of these people who want to troll them and say negative things. So there has been like advances in even technology to help these players understand that, like, hey, we don't even need you to interact. Like, let's just remove it completely to protect your mental health and let you focus on basketball. But it's going to happen. It's going to come out. There's going to be negativity, and here's how we can help you deal with it. So I do think it's important. I think we do it well at the Connecticut Sun, but it's always going to be up to the player on whether or not they choose to use the resources that we provide.
And I think that something this year that you had to deal with that was probably super, I don't want to say unplanned, but definitely probably unplanned. You guys have this team. They're all new. They're all coming together, which I commend you for. And then the front page of the Hartford Courant one day says, hey, Connecticut, we're looking around. Connecticut Sun might be selling and going to Boston, da-da-da-da.
Yeah.
Probably no notice to anybody. Yeah. So it's on the front page. I'm not going to ask you about the sale or what have you, because I don't want to breathe it into existence. I hope it goes away. But what I want to know is, how do you keep these women motivated? I mean, at this point as an athlete, like, you think to yourself, what am I fighting for?
Yeah.
So what safeguards did you guys put in place to keep all these women going?
Yeah. So it's sometimes it's just about framing the right narrative, right? And although the fans may have interpreted that negatively, or our players could have interpreted it as they don't want us anymore, the way I tried to frame it was, we have an ownership group that has invested, hundreds of millions of dollars in this team over the course of decades, right? They bought the team when no one wanted it. They kept it alive. And it's been one of the most successful franchises in WNBA history. They have come to an inflection point where the amount of resources that now need to be put into owning a WNBA team kind of conflicts a little bit with the mission of the tribe, right? Who is there to support their members, their families, provide education, health, housing, and activities for their tribal members. And what the expectation of what a WNBA owner needs to do right now doesn't necessarily fit that model. And so what I told the team was, like, regardless of what happens, it's a reflection of the fact that they know that more money needs to be invested into the team. So whether they decide to keep it and invest in the way that they need to, or take on minority investors to build you a practice facility, or they decide that it's better for them or you that they sell it completely, you're going to get only something positive is coming out of this. Because what's not going to happen is status quo. Because status quo is proving to not be good enough. And so look at it as, like, you're going to have an ownership group, whether it's the Mohegan Tribe or a new ownership group that is going to build you a practice facility, invest in the team, invest in resources to make sure that we can get back to that championship level that we're used to. And so all I need you to do is focus on playing, and come here, do your job, like, continue to make the WNBA the type of league that people want to invest hundreds of millions of dollars in. Like, this is a positive thing. It's a great place for our team and our league to be in, that we have people fighting over wanting to own you and wanting to invest in you. And so I just ask them to think about it that way and focus on the season and play their hearts out and and give the fans a show. Like, part of their job is to show up for our fans. And I feel like they did that. You were there.
They sure did.
They showed up for our fans. Our fans loved this team. I couldn't believe that some of the crowds we had at the last month of the season were better than what we had last year when we were trying to actually win a championship. they were so invested in these players. And so it made me really proud that they were able to kind of put aside some of the distractions that might have been surrounding the team and just really hone in on each other and getting better and making progress and thinking about the future, and not so much thinking about where they'll be in the future, but just thinking about that they want to be part of an organization that's going to be successful in the future.
And you guys had picked up quite a few surprising picks. Tina Charles, nobody saw that coming, which I think was genius, by the way, because she's beloved in Connecticut.
Yes.
Layla turned out to be amazing. I mean, I don't think that our fans here really understand that a lot of talent is internationally. And if we can pull those people over, that's ideal. But it's probably hard because if you lack a practice facility, if you lack proper transportation, if you lack these things that are just elementary for most, how do you expect these people to want to play for you?
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
I mean, but I also don't know, like, practice facility, how much is that?
Depends on how much you want to spend on it, but
Is it minimum, bare bones?
$70 million.
I mean, but people hear practice facility, I think, and they're like, oh, it's $1 million, it's $2 million. $70 million is coin.
LA just announced their practice facility. They're going to spend $150 million on it. You know, like $150 million. So we're talking about right now, probably you can't get away with less than $100 million. So this isn't like a drop in the bucket.
Right.
And, you know, this isn't necessarily something that aligns with the business of the Mohegan tribe and the casinos that they own, right? Like it doesn't. So for them to even consider how can we do this and make it happen and keep the team is also a testament to how much they appreciate having a WNBA team here. And so I think it's just about making sure we're partnering with the right people as we move forward, making it an attractive franchise to play for, and, you know, putting ourselves in a position where, you know, we can say we have everything you need, not just to be a top level athlete when you're 22 coming out of college, but when you're 32 and you're thinking about the back half of your career, that we're going to have all the resources that you need to take care of your body, to take care of your family, and feel really good about coming to practice and coming to games and grinding every single day because you have all the things you need to keep yourself healthy.
So I have a question. The whole time you're talking about the players, the team, what motivates you? You've had a career for many, many years.
Yeah.
You've been in the limelight for many, many years.
Yeah.
What motivates you the entire time to keep going?
I mean, I think it's just giving back to the game. You know, it seems so cliche, but I can remember when I started my coaching career, I was 25 years old. I never thought I would do it for 20 plus years. But the impact that I could make as a coach was so much greater than the impact that I was making as a player, because I was, you know, coaching 15 women a year, and I was putting out a product on the floor that was impacting thousands of fans every year. And I was positively having an impact on these women's lives to help them become great leaders and great moms and great, you know, business people. Then I took this job and I'm like, oh, wow, this is even bigger and better than coaching because I have a whole organization. So I've got the players that I can impact and provide all the resources for. I have coaches now that I can make sure have everything that they need to be successful. And then I've got this front office where I can, similar to what Brooke has done, hire the next generation of leaders, especially young women, making sure that I'm a positive influence on the trajectory of their career so that I'm paving the way for what comes next in the WNBA. And I'm creating future team presidents or future GMs or future head basketball coaches with the people that I impact every day. So I think it's just creating, like, knowing that I can leave a legacy where I gave a lot back to this game of basketball that has given so much to me.
And your shoes. So the first thing I think of with basketball is, are they going to get a sneaker, right? Yeah. So fast forward, and you're your 22-year-old self now.
Yeah.
And you're a star in the league, and all the attention's on you. Who makes your shoe, and what does it look like?
Oh, God. I had a shoe when I came out of college. I mean, it wasn't like a Jen Rosati shoe, but I had a Nike.
But we want the Jen Rosati shoe.
I don't know. It would be probably fairly simple to what I'm wearing right now. I'm not...
Nikes?
Yeah, definitely Nike. I'm not super flashy. I want it to be comfortable.
No Angel Reese shoes?
No.
She sold out in like
I mean, they're great.
Minutes.
But I'm like, when you look at all the it's so funny because my son wears the Sabrinas.
It's awesome. Sure.
And the shoe before Sabrina's that he was wearing was the Stewies. So it wasn't even about the brand, because obviously you're talking about Puma and Nike. It was about the feel and then the simplicity, because both of them were like one solid color,
Sure.
So I'm more about comfort. I'm more about versatility. I want to be able to wear this shoe with a lot of different, outfits. But if I'm just playing basketball, it's going to be comfort and simple.
And outside the sun, right? We pretend the sun's not here.
Yeah.
What players in the WNBA make you excited to watch?
Oh God.
You guys are playing against somebody who's fun to watch.
Yeah. God, there's a lot of players. So, I mean, I've always been a fan of Paige, but I think some of that is just because I know her more personally from being part of the UConn family. And so I kind of always have tended to root for a lot of the players and, kind of just watching her impact and what she's done and the adversity that she's fought through. She's just like a really easy person to root for. I've also coached a lot of these players through USA Basketball. So like I had a chance to coach Cam Brink. So like she's just like a genuinely great person that I'm rooting for, because she's another one that faced adversity. Brittney Griner, I mentioned her before, biggest sweetheart. Like every time she sees me, she like picks me up and gives me the biggest hug. So maybe I don't love her game as a player because she's a lot bigger than me and plays very different, but I love watching her be successful. I think this year, I've really enjoyed watching Kelsey Mitchell, as a smaller guard who's like never really gotten a lot of attention, to finally get her flowers and have everybody see like how good she is. I've really kind of enjoyed watching that. And I think like ultimately, like when you look at who the best players in the league are, I think the fact that Nafisa and Asia are, kind of the faces of the league in terms of like MVP conversation, like we couldn't be in better hands. They're so good. They're great. If you listen to how their teammates talk about them as leaders, right? You can't go wrong. Their teammates talk about the locker room. They talk about their leadership. They talk about how they make them better. So they're easy to root for. I mean, not when they're playing the Connecticut Sun, but if I was like if I was starting a team and I had one player to pick in the league, it would probably come down to Nafisa or Asia Wilson, because not only are they the two of the best players, but they're two of the best leaders in our league right now.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you for coming on, Jen.
Yeah.
Thank you. And
Yeah.
go Sun. And
All
let's
right.
stay in Connecticut.
Awesome.
All right.
Sounds good.
Thanks.